Hello and welcome to the Heal Yourself with me, Sarah Dawkins podcast. We share people who've already healed themselves, along with health and wellness tips from myself. Hello and welcome back to Heal Yourself. My guest today is Greg Wasserman, who was guided by the motto, life is about time and relationships. You never know where a conversation today will take you in the future. Greg uniquely connects with people, fostering growth and creating lasting bonds. This talent has been instrumental in his success in business, making him the go-to person for introductions and partnerships. So welcome to the podcast, Greg.
Sarah, thank you so much. Pleasure to get to talk to you and have this forum to talk with your community about all the different ways we can heal ourselves.
Absolutely, and thank you. Would you like to share with our audience what you've healed and how you've healed it?
I would be honored to. So for me, give you guys an additional context. Born and raised in Chicago, amazing, loving family, Jewish family, Holocaust surviving grandparents. Mom was born after the war. And so they came over here to the States. And I guess the best way to look at it is like it was a great, normal family, very loving, very kind. But one thing that you don't realize is, and I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, so I always go to Brene as an example here, is she always tells a story about when she was sick as a kid, her parents would do everything to take care of them. But when they were sick, she always witnessed that they didn't stop work. They didn't really take care of their health. And so her mind then equated sickness as a weakness, right? So it wasn't the loving kindness that her parents were giving her as a child, like, oh, take care of yourself. It was more of the adult actions that one was taking as an adult, because as most of us can recognize as an adult, especially if you have kids, like the work never stops, and you have responsibilities to in your mind to take care of, but you don't take care of yourself. And so I like in that story because that's very much what was for me. The actions, the love and grace and so forth that was given to me, it was not the lens that I actually used and put on. And so for me, a lot of things ultimately turned into not being good enough, not feeling like I was worth anything. And that was never the intentions of anyone. And those are never the intentions. I think intentions is really the biggest thing, is like we always like to say like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't intend to do that. Right. And so we're negating the person's feelings because like, well, our intentions weren't there. Like that was their reality. That is ultimately what ended up happening. And so I think as a society, we have a fix-it problem. We are so quick to try and fix someone's issue, whether it is they say something and you're like, oh, I know an answer to that, but they didn't even ask you, hey, do you have an answer? I would love a solution. So I give you this whole story because ultimately all of that led to, I guess, a self-worth of not being good enough, a negative core belief that I didn't deserve, I wasn't worthy of anything. So when you work in sales, as I do in revenue, right? So you're getting rejected a lot. So if you take a negative core belief of you're not good enough with the rejection of sales, along of all these other things that psychologically you aren't aware of, it adds an injury to insult, or insult to injury, right? And so ultimately, that led me to my 40s, where I didn't know why I wasn't happy. Parents would always say like, oh, we just want you happy, but you don't know what that means. You aren't sure, why am I not happy? What is going on with me? There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of belief that like I wasn't worthy of things. And so once again, going back to this story of you don't know what lens you are putting on things and the intentions of that person's actions. And so that ultimately led to severe depression, suicidal thoughts, and finally a breakdown literally 2 years ago this week. So not necessarily when you probably listen to this, but from a standpoint, 2 years ago here in September, I finally crashed, and it was getting actually help. So I ultimately found a loved one was able to guide me into a program and know that there was assistance. So I got 3 months of a outpatient program giving me support to reprogram the brain to understand like what were those core beliefs that I was holding on to and realize like they aren't true. How do we see through them? How do we change our mindset so that we can actually understand? But it goes back to I believe we have a fix it and a Me Too society. And so in order to heal our society, we have to stop those behaviors. We are so quick to try and create connection by saying like, my dad passed away. You're like, oh, me too. I had a death in the family as well. And all of a sudden, we are now trying to create connection, but we're actually invalidating that other person's experience that's sharing it. And so I think we need to do a better job of not only the setup and going like, look, I want to share something with you. I'm not expecting you to respond, but I want to share, which takes a little more effort on the side of the share, but also then creates a better environment for the person to know, if I'm not listening to you, this person is sharing with me just for that. And if we don't do a good job on this setup, we have to do a better job on going like, hey, are you sharing this with me because you want an answer, you want feedback, or you just want someone to listen to? So both sides, if we actually start taking the process of setup and stopping to listen and ask, I feel like we'll have a better environment because we'll actually start creating more validation. We'll start creating the value that both parties are looking for. It takes a little extra work, takes a little more time, and as consumers, we're lazy, want to go straight for whatever the quickest thing may be. But that will create a better communication, create better validation, and actually will help us heal the world, in my mind. And so it's not only the fix it, but the Me Too component that comes. So for me, the healing journey was ultimately getting help, and getting to a point where I chose help, which, as we record this right now, Sarah, like it is Suicide Awareness Month in September. So understanding that you aren't alone, but that is a lonely feeling, and you don't know how to ask for help, how to share those feelings. That part of it, I was never raised to understand what those feelings were. So a lot of it is subconscious. You don't even know what you're doing, what may be affecting you. So you can say growth work. And so in 2020, when the world shut down, and I started like, all right, well, the world shut down. What do I do now? Might as well start my self-healing journey. So I tried doing it myself. But at the end of the day, there was no way until I went and got professional help that I was actually able to understand like what was the core underneath the underlying issues that I had no concept of. So that's kind of it, Sarah. Hopefully that's helpful for anyone that's listening. But at the end of the day, you're not alone. We have an issue of Me Too and Fix It in my mind that creates some of your negative core beliefs, that creates the negative components of your life that you may not even be aware of. And so it's understanding some of that there is a way to heal it. And so now I look back 2 years later, the core beliefs aren't there. I believe in myself. We will always be triggered by some of those actions. Like that's just the nature. And that continues, like as we say, we're always in recovery. So I'm always in this recovery path. Substance uses it from that standpoint. I think we're always in a path of recovery. And so for me, it's to make sure I'm never going back to those mindsets, that we're moving forward, and you feel better and lighter because of it.
Thank you. And I love that you've brought up core beliefs because that really feeds into depression when we have the core beliefs that I'm not worthy, I can't do it. And when we can find the origins of those core beliefs and work on that and understand how we chose to use those core beliefs as a filter to view our life through, then we can look at changing them by looking at, is there any evidence to support that core belief that I'm not worthy? Or is it a bias that I've developed? Or is there any counter evidence? So when we start dissecting it and looking at that truly and honestly, it helps us to see what our reality really is rather than what our current belief is, because those beliefs are they're born into us from our years 0 to 7. And until we become conscious of our core beliefs, they stay with us. And it takes things like depression and suicidal thoughts to really dig into it. And like, why do I feel not worthy? Where has that come from? And is that really true? And doing that inner work helps us to allay that belief and actually change it for something more fitting for the time that we're in now, because we're now the adult. We can look at it with adult eyes rather than the child that was within us with that core belief that I'm not worthy.
100%. I think the interesting work that I ultimately did that kind of helped was, what are your core beliefs? What are your parents' core beliefs, and what are society's core beliefs? And then once you start breaking that down, you start realizing, at least for me, they're like, hold on, my core beliefs are not my parents, but I've been adopting them. And then there's a friction there of like, why are these beliefs misaligned? And therefore, for my own internal struggle of, I don't believe that. Like, then, and the eventuality of going like, all right, your parents can be yourself, society can be themselves, but like, what is it that I value? And so having that struggle, at least what I had, was a struggle of trying to appease others that was misaligned with myself. And so once you have that understanding of like, all right, now I know who I am, what I believe, there's still going to be that friction with others because you've now categorized and recognized, like, hold on, this isn't what I want. And so now you have the voice to go like, wait, this isn't who I am. This is who I am. And you'll create friction, but boundary setting becomes a big thing. And when you don't know, or at least I didn't understand, like, boundaries, you're not raised to understand those components. So a lot of this stuff are learned behaviors that was never taught, that were kind of just societal norms that you just adapted and go like, this just doesn't feel right. And so for me, looking inward and having an actual guide to do that work with was instrumental. And I think every person should do that, whether you understand your core beliefs, you're like, I'm clear on this, like, clarity becomes king. I've worked with a bunch of people, and the one thing that they are always specifying is clarity. A lot of us aren't clear on some of these. We ask questions, look at the Socratic mindset of like, just ask questions like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you believe what you believe? And start peeling those layers back, as opposed to, I just do it because I just do it. That really starts helping everything mental, but also your life and your journey and so forth.
Yeah, and we have to become conscious, don't we? We have to live our life consciously, because 95% of the time we're running on our subconscious stroke unconscious mind, really not paying attention to what's going on around us all the time. So digging in to find out who we are authentically and what our core beliefs are takes some work, because, as you say, we can adopt our parents' views and beliefs, or we can make our own based on the behaviors that we see our parents doing, because words are only 7% of the message, aren't they? The 93% are body language. So if we're being told something, but we're being shown something different, we're going to go with what we're being shown and take that as our truth as a child.
Yeah, I mean, you hear the stories all the time, myself included. It's like what's quote unquote normal to one person is actually sometimes it's abuse, sometimes it's neglect, right? Like it's just what what you're used to, and you think like, oh, this is normal, this is what everyone does. So you actually don't know that some of what you believe, or some of the actions, or some of the behaviors, or whatever it may be, is not normal, and that's a hard thing for a person to understand, and to raise their hand and ask, like, is this normal, right? And so I think the biggest takeaway for me is actually starting to ask the questions. And a lot of us don't ask questions. We're afraid to ask questions, going like, Sarah, like, this is my experience. Like, what is your experience? And trying to do it without a judgment, but more of curiosity, and going like, if you tell me your story, I'm going to go like, hold on, that's not mine, but that's your reality. So like, it's just a curiosity there. But like, you start getting the data points. I'm always going to go to data in this mindset. Like, you start getting data points, going like, hold on, what is my reality is not quote unquote normal. And so if you don't understand, to start being curious and ask those questions and ask for help, you'll stay where you are and never know the better.
Yeah, and on top of that as well, I think just listening, the art of listening, helping somebody to feel seen and heard, as you alluded to earlier, is in itself a healing act. Because as you said previously, that sometimes, we're quick to offer a solution, and actually the person telling us their problems is just looking to be seen and heard, and maybe they weren't seen and heard as a child, and now they're looking for that. And once we allow them to be seen and heard without giving them solutions, that helps them in their own healing journey too.
100%. Like, that's why I say we have a fix it and a me too issue. And so if we could just take a step back and start that communication process, and I'll say it's an incredibly hard relearning or learning a new skill. So it's great to learn who I am, but now learning those new skills to go like, how do I set this up? How do I take the time to set it up? Even though I'm the person saying like, we need to fix this, it starts with me, but that's still a hard skill for most of us to get used to. Like, how's your day at work? Like, I just want to tell you how my day was. Please don't tell me how to fix it. Please, like, adding that extra step in there. It's so quick to just like, let me tell you about my day at work to answer your question. But now you're going to go like, well, how did you do this? Or what about that? It's like, wait, you asked me how my day was work. You didn't say, is it okay now that I give you suggestions, right? So like, we have to set the story up, but also understand the person who's asking that question. Listen, and listening means like, you never got permission to go ahead and start giving insights, to giving an answer, to quote unquote fix whatever the person just told you. So I think we need to do a better job at that. And once again, I'll continue to say, like, we'll end up being a better society and a healed society, because we're taking that extra moment to listen, to not respond, but to set ourselves up to a conversation.
And that can be really challenging for the person that's really struggling with depression, because as you know, and I know, having suffered it, we tend not to reach outwards. So to have that conversation, to be proactive and say, I want to tell you this, but please don't give me a solution or try and solve problems. We're still wading through treacle in our conscious mind at the front because of the struggle and the suffering that we're going through. So it takes real effort to get to that point, to be able to say that. I mean, that is like already way down the healing line, because in the beginning, I don't know about, well, you actually reached out and got help, but I couldn't. I was just so inside myself, and shut down. And I know people came to me to try and help, but I just didn't. I wasn't receptive.
if you're not trained to be receptive, if that's your core, that you are a burden, right? So my core, having grown up, was I'll give you the shirt off my back, but I'm never going to ask for help because I don't want to be a burden, right? And so once I went through a program and you realized, Greg, if you are willing to do this for someone else and it gives you joy and it's a gift, why don't you think that gift for another person is the same? And that's not how your brain's thinking. Your brain's thinking like, I'm a burden to that person, right? So that becomes the biggest hurdle to get over and realize, hold on, how would I speak to myself? How do I speak to another person? Like, you wouldn't do some of those things, but that's just not how your brain is operating.
No, and it's like wading through a treacle trying to think logically and rationally when you're in those dark times.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. And could you? I know you've shared quite a lot already, but could you share one tip that somebody going through the struggle of depression could do to help themselves on their own healing journey?
Ask for help. I think that would be the biggest. It's going to be the hardest thing to do. There's so much shame that you're probably feeling. There's so much fear. But asking for help will be the game changer that will A, save your life, and B, give you a path forward for living. Because once you start being vulnerable, right? So I go back to Bernay, like the vulnerability, it hurts. That vulnerability, shame of like, I can't believe I just said these things. I can't believe I shared the pain, the hurt, the inner thoughts. How are they going to judge me? What are they going to think about me? I mean, no different than I will probably have a vulnerability hangover after this conversation, because anytime you share this story, especially with strangers, you're like, I don't know what they're going to think of me. What is this going to do for my reputation? For like, all those components come in. And then you start realizing, like, hold on, by sharing this story, by asking for help, you are empowering yourself. You are, in a sense, actually giving yourself the capacity to move forward, to get the healing you need, to give another person, another human, the ability to help you. And that's a great gift in itself, because it's a gift you also probably end up giving to that person as well, or someone else. So asking for help is probably going to be the biggest thing to do, because then you also realize you're no longer alone. And that is usually the biggest piece to depression as well. It's because you feel so alone. You're like, I can't talk to anyone. I can't share this. How could I share this? No one understands what I'm going through. How will anyone understand this? And so, yeah, that's going to be the biggest piece, I'd say. At least was helpful for me 2 years ago, when I was finally confronted and had to share where I was mentally. That was the hardest thing, but that led to me getting help and therefore moving forward. So yeah, that's going to be my biggest advice.
And that's beautiful, because it takes courage and confidence to ask for help. And when we step into that, we can build on that. Because when I was depressed, I had no courage, no confidence. My confidence, my comfort zone was so tiny that anything I did meant stepping out of it. So the more we can step out of our comfort zone and ask for help, and step into our own healing journey and start doing more things for ourselves, the stronger we grow, because the confidence we get from stepping out, from using the courage to ask for help, it just builds and builds and builds.
100%. Asking for help is actually a sign of self-awareness, self-confidence, and self-esteem, which you would never think. And especially if you have those low confidence, low self-esteem, and so forth, by asking for it, you are actually empowering yourself. You are growing your confidence. You are growing your esteem. Once again, because you're being vulnerable, you're asking for help, but you're having the awareness of, I need assistance. And by asking for it, you feel better because you're like, yeah, I don't know all the answers. It's okay not to know all the answers. And I feel comfortable enough in my body and who I am to go and seek those answers. We're on a podcast right now. So most podcasters start podcasts because they're like, I want to get answers to questions. So they started a podcast to go ahead and like, hey, tell me the answer to this story or the answer to this question so that I can learn. And that ultimately becomes a way that they become an expert in whatever the topic they were going for. So they have the self-awareness and the confidence to go like, I don't know. I'm going to go find someone who knows the answer, and that will help me in the journey. But if you put that mindset of like, that's why people are doing that for your own healing journey, that's going to be incredibly powerful.
Fabulous. Thank you. And where can people find you?
So currently I live on LinkedIn. That is my medium of choice. So I'm constantly posting for a podcast, since I work in the podcast industry, partnerships, mental health, because years ago, people, while it's a business platform, I saw people posting about their mental health. Normally we think like that's a Instagram avenue, right? But like, seeing us as business people sharing our struggles in a business mindset, like, helped me realize, hold on, if they're sharing this story, I'm not alone. And while I didn't have the ideas to reach out and do anything about it at that point, it is now my job to share some of that journey as well, because you don't know who you're able to connect with, who you're able to reach. So as you said at the top, my motto is life is about time and relationships. So I don't know where me sharing this story with you right now on this podcast, for anyone that's listening, whether it's now or you listen to this podcast a year from now and go like, wow, I'm finally at the point for that conversation between Greg and Sarah to resonate with me, that I can do something. Like, I read many books beforehand that didn't resonate until I was ready. So that's why I'm always sharing that. So LinkedIn, Greg Wasserman, you'll see my page. It says life is about time and relationships, and you'll know it's me.
Fabulous. Thank you for sharing your healing journey and your vulnerability, Greg. I appreciate it.
Sarah, thanks for what you do. Thanks for giving us a platform to share this, for you sharing your own story. And for everyone that's listening to know that there's a way to heal, and Sarah is helping us all do that.
Thank you for listening. Please share this podcast with anyone who you think will benefit. And can you leave me a review wherever you've listened to it to help me reach more people? Thank you.